Tonight we are going to be discussing the Rock Island Trail. My name is Ron Bentch, and I am Project Director for Missourians for Responsible Transportation. Joining me is also Jackson Hoteling. Jackson, give a wave there. Jackson works with me at MRT. So we're just going to start tonight. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the Rock Island Trail, talk about the timeline and history, the impact it's going to have, and going forward. We'll end with just a question and answer time at the end. Not able to. For some reason, my screen is locked up. There we go. All right. So Missourians for Responsible Transportation, just to tell you a little bit about ourselves. We are a partnership with 4 organizations, and PedNet is one of those. Jackson and I work out of the PedNet office in Columbia. We are a partnership with PedNet, TrailNet in St. Louis, Bike Walk KC, and Ozark Greenways. And our mission is to lead in fostering strong communities by aligning advocacy efforts for streets, roads, trails that work for all Missourians. And our vision is a statewide transportation system that is fiscally responsible and allows all Missourians to travel safely and independently. So that's what the 4 organizations are working on together. It's a partnership of 34 staff across the state, and it's been a really great team to work with. So just a little bit of an overview of the Rock Island Trail. For those of you who don't know, here is a map that was prepared by State Parks. The red you'll see is the Katy Trail that exists now. And Columbia's pretty close to the Katy Trail there. The blue, I believe it's blue on the left side of the screen, is the Rock Island Spur. That is a state park that was built in about 2016. That already exists right now. It also goes all the way up to Lee Summit that was just recently opened. And the main part of our discussion tonight is going to be the gray part. Something is going wrong with my all right, so the gray part will be the part that we will be discussing for the most part, but I am going to turn it over to Jackson because just recently Jackson got to experience the new part of the Rock Island Trail that is from kind of Lee Summit, Kansas City, and goes all the way to Windsor. So Jackson, I'm going to turn it over to you to share next.
All right, thank you, Ron. So just briefly, from this past Saturday until Monday, over Labor Day, I rode out with a friend of mine who's actually on this call, Gabby Jacobs, just to hang out in Kansas City for the day, but I came back. I came back almost exclusively on trails, which was one of the coolest things that I have done in Missouri ever. There's literally a 10-mile section of trail that is missing between Arrowhead Stadium and Columbia, downtown Columbia. So this first section here is the part that's in the Kansas City area, just to show you a little bit about what we have. This was just completed this past summer, this section here. It's about 17 miles and businesses are getting ready. There's Crane Brewing Company. They have tons of bike racks and they are huge supporters of the trail. The Chamber of Commerce has bike racks set up. And the trail itself is incredibly beautiful. And the street network has been built to accommodate that. Next slide, please. So in between, there's a small gap, but you could even see there's another cyclist currently using that. So it's a gap that is filled with a few businesses, and there's the town of Greenwood that it goes through. There's a self-service honey stand that there's a photo of here. And next slide, please. And then the remaining 47 miles until the incomplete section connects to the Katy Trail. Starts in Pleasant Hill and ends in the town of Windsor. It's remarkable. It's just amazing to see people out and about. I saw groups from Buffalo, New York, San Diego, California, coming to Missouri for the purpose of, exploring the trail. So it was an amazing experience, and I'm really excited for the opportunity that we have coming up.
All right. All right. Thanks, Jackson. Jackson got to ride all the way from Kansas City to Columbia with only about 9 miles that were not protected trail, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know why I'm having problems. All right, so I'm going to go back to the map here. This is the map of the Rock Island Trail. So we're going to talk about the gray area that goes from Windsor all the way over to Beaufort. That's 144 miles that is still yet to be accepted. And it goes through 23 towns and communities along that Rock Island corridor. This is an example of where the trail is in a lot of places. This is Stover. We took this photo about, I don't know, 6 months ago, and a lot of it is overgrown, but you can see where the trail was, and a lot of it looks like that. One of the really cool things about the Rock Island Trail is that it goes through the center of most of these 23 towns, as opposed to the Katy Trail, which follows the river. So this is the town of Versailles, and you'll see that the Rock Island Trail goes very close to downtown. So you would have access to all kinds of restaurants. It's a safe route for schools. It goes by a nursing home. So this is going to be a really great thing for these towns. And this is the way it is for almost all the towns along the trail corridor. So that's why it's different than the Katy Trail, which if you ride the Katy Trail, you'll see that you hit the edge of towns. This one goes right through the center. And in Versailles, you have about 3 miles that are within the city limits. That's also very typical. And it's going to be a great thing for most towns and communities to be able to experience, to have some place that's safe to walk, some place that's safe to exercise, and bring a lot of tourism to their town as well. You see that Versailles is improving their sidewatch, which will connect to the future trail. So they've already started to do quite a bit of work on that as well. So just a timeline of where we have been. The Rock Island Trail was built in 1903. It actually transported people to the World's Fair in 1904. In 1980 was when the rail line stopped. I actually grew up in Versailles, lived along the trail, and at one time I decided I was going to hop on the train and ride from Versailles to Eldon. It's been one of my big regrets that I actually didn't do it. I chickened out. As it turns out, 25 miles an hour is really fast to try and hop on a train. Had I known that in the future I was going to be working on, like getting the trail adopted, I probably would have hopped on it just so I'd have a better story to tell than that I chickened out. So Ameren started working with state parks to rail bank in around 2014. In March 2019, a fundraising coalition formed to collaborate with state parks, and the fundraising process began. In December of 2019, state parks entered into an interim trail use agreement contingent on raising $9.8 million. This is going to have a huge impact for our state. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it's going to create a world-class trail loop. So it's going to be a 400 or 450 mile loop around Missouri that is going to be really neat, because that kind of thing doesn't exist anywhere. And as you know, right now, when you ride on the Katy Trail, if you want to do the whole thing, you usually drive to one end and ride to the other. This would allow for people who are backpacking, those kinds of things, to be able to park somewhere in a town and go on a destination backpacking type ride. It's going to have a lot of businesses that are going to develop from that. What's been really neat is a lot of these towns are already starting to develop. I know people who have built buildings and are starting to remodel them that are next to the trails because they are anticipating what's going to happen. There's some really cool features on the trail with lots of bridges. And another neat figure there is 41% of Missourians will live within 50 miles of the trail system. When we say that there's some really neat features, this is an overhead view of a bridge that goes across the Gasconade River. That is really beautiful. It would be really neat to see that actually become a trail to where we could ride across it And I would expect a lot of people would be drawn to that from around the world. So I want to get into why $9.8 million to accept a gift. And if we look at the history here from 2009 to 2017, Missouri State Parks acquired 7 new parks during that time. In about 2017, the state legislature started to say no new parks until there was additional revenue. And right now, the current budget for state parks is maxed out. So they feel like they have this huge system of 91 state parks that are really great, but they do not have money to accept anything else. So for them to accept the trail, 144 miles is expensive to maintain. They have to install fencing, they have to hire rangers, they have to purchase vehicles and securing that. So those costs of that 9.8 million was projected out over about 10 years of costs that they would have for that. The example that I like to give is, and this has actually happened to me, where someone has offered to give me a house for free, but the cost of fixing that house up was not worth it to take it. And that's a little bit of the same thing here, is there's a huge cost that is involved with accepting the trail without a funding source. So that is where we're at right now in the process. Is we entered into, the state parks entered into the trail use agreement in 2019 in December. A few months later, a pandemic hit. It actually did hurt the fundraising process. So about 1 million of 9.8 has been raised. We have been applying for federal earmarks, and grants are being pursued. There's ARPA funding, State Parks is working towards that. They are committed to this. They have said that this is something that they want, and they are committed to continuing to work on that. My experience with state parks has been that they've been very passionate about this in the past couple of years. Drew Bunton, who is now the Department of Natural Resources Director, has been working on this very hard. We now have Mike Sutherland moving up to the Deputy DNR Director, and David Kelly, who has a long history and lives near the Katy Trail, is now the State Parks Director. All of them have been working hard at this, and we are in regular contact with them as well. I think the really exciting thing about the Rock Island Trail is that the state legislators' attitudes are starting to change towards this. And we saw this year. We had a meeting at the Capitol. In 2018, it wasn't a very popular subject to bring up at the Capitol. You didn't get much interest. And at the end of, I think it was this was taken about April this year, we had a meeting at the Capitol. We had about, I think it was 15 different members of the House that showed up. There was a lot of public support. A lot of letters were written to Senator Blunt's office in support of federal earmarks. And so we saw a really good momentum going when it came to the trail with the state legislature. So what I want to try and get across is that I feel like momentum is growing. As you know, I know everyone wants this trail to happen tomorrow, but we are seeing progress towards this becoming a state park. I would like to see it happen tomorrow. I know lots of people on the call would as well. So I just want to also talk about the champions and supporters. This is a list of everyone who is kind of working on this together to see the 144 miles become a state park. There's a few people on the call I want to mention. We have John Riddick, who is the president of the Missouri State Parks Foundation. There you are, John. And they are heading up the fundraising efforts for that. We also have Greg Harris. He is executive director of the Missouri Rock Island Trail Association on the call. And I'm trying to see if there's anyone else that I've missed that is key in that. But everyone has been working very hard to make this happen. I just want to now open it up if there are any questions anyone has or comments or that kind of thing, but just to open it up for a discussion.
So Ron, this is John. I just want to mention that Jackson's experience. Think how cool it's going to be when he could ride all the way from Kansas City to St. Louis or the outskirts of St. Louis on that trail. And that's something pretty cool.
Yeah, it really will be cool. just to let you know, and to kind of continue with what John's saying, that there are plans where the Rock Island would eventually extend up into the St. Louis region. Also at Washington, Missouri, there is a bridge there that they're looking at. That would be the connection to make the loop right now. There's also talk of connecting the Frisco Highline Trail with the Rock Island Trail eventually. And there already is, you know, gravel routes and those kinds of things that happen. But it'd be really cool if the 3 major cities of Missouri were all, or the 4 were all connected by trail.
I would just like to add that my father is on the call, and I grew up in the St. Louis area, so I'm sure he would love for me to bike back home. The magic too, though, is that the trail in several places goes along Amtrak routes, just as the Katy does too. So it's easy to be able to go from Kansas City across to St. Louis and then bike back without having to leave a car there. Those options are available. So it is incredible what is possible with this.
So you're right. I would like you to bike back here more often. So what can we do here in St. Louis, Ron? What can we do to advocate for this? Or what kind of people that I come in contact with should I be talking to? Politicians, corporate sponsors? Who can we advocate to?
Sure. Yeah. And you just said it right there. Definitely in the St. Louis area, there has been not many people know about the Rock Island Trail, not like they do in the Kansas City region. So we definitely need to get more people informed about it, corporate sponsors, those kinds of things. We do have the fundraising efforts going on with the Missouri State Parks Foundation, with John and that, and we can definitely get people connected to the fundraising efforts. Also, we do need to talk to lawmakers. They need to hear from everyone on the call that this is important to you, to call your local legislator, your senator. That is very important. Also, as we keep going, next year we will be probably applying for more federal earmarks in the House and the Senate. And we will need letters of support. We will need community buy-in, those kinds of things. So all of that are things that you can do. I saw that David had a question, what has to happen to extend the deadline? And I don't know if anyone knows exactly this. So usually what would happen is state parks and the Surface Transportation Board and Ameren would extend that, and they would apply for an extension for that agreement. In talking to them, there's been some question about whether that has to happen or not. And so state parks is, and DNR is very aware of that. They have been communicating about that, and they say this is definitely not something that they plan to let go, so that if they need to extend that agreement, they are planning to do so. Other questions, comments?
Hey, Ron, you may have mentioned this, but once the Rock Island is put into place, how many miles of rails to trails then we would have? Essentially, what would be the full loop? And does anywhere else in the world or country have something like this?
So I believe that it would be 450 miles of combining the Rock Island with the Katy Trail and the spur. There would be a little bit more if you add in the Frisco Highline and the new extension of the Rock Island Trail. I don't have a total. I guess I need to add that up because that's a really, really good question. To my knowledge, the Katy Trail is already the longest rail to trail in the nation. I don't know of anything else in the world like it. Certainly not the loop that we would have. That would really set us apart as a destination. So, you know, I may not know what I'm talking about, but I call it like the largest loop rails to trail loop in the world. There may be something else different, but I'm going to keep saying it till someone corrects me.
You know, Ron, if we get this done, we might have to change the nickname of Missouri from the Show Me State to the Trail State.
That's right.
This might be a stupid question, but we have some funding can you go over the funding of how this is going to be a reality, how we're going to make it reality, the percentages of where money has to come from in order to make this a reality?
Right. So the 9.8 has to happen before they're going to close that agreement. Now, state parks and DNR have said they don't care where that money comes from. That can be federal earmarks. That could be the ARPA funds, the American, I can never remember the whole name of all that, but the funding that has come out lately is something that they're going to be applying for. It could be grants, it could be things like that. And as long as they can hit that mark, they're going to accept the trail. So if it can be a private funding, that would be great as well. And I think it's going to be a combination of a lot of those things.
Okay.
Now, also, the one thing I failed to mention was Senator Bernskoetter and Representative Wood did create the endowment fund for the Rock Island Trail. So any money that is raised would go into that fund, and it would be only spent on the Rock Island Trail corridor. It would not be going to the general budget for state parks. So there's a fund that is made to where money will be spent exclusively on the Rock Island Trail, and it's developed.
So I have a Fidelity charitable account, and so if I wanted to donate to that, that would be considered a legitimate, what is it, 30, whatever,
a 501c3
charitable 501c. Yeah,
Mhm.
Would that be considered? That would be approved, and I could just donate directly to the Rock Island Trail, or PedNet, go through PedNet and do it, or what's the best way to get the money to the Rock Island?
Go ahead, John.
Efforts.
It should actually go to the Missouri State Parks Foundation. And then
Give to Missouri State Parks Foundation.
right.
Earmark the Rock Island Trail.
For the Rock Island, right? Because we do have a couple other projects. One of them is the Route 66 State Park Bridge in St. Louis. But the Rock Island is, in my mind, is the most important right now.
And that information is on the Rock Island, by donating that's on the Rock Island Trail site or PedNet site, or
Is
how
it
to
on
do
your
that.
site? Or you?
Yeah, Jackson just put it in the chat there, to where it's on the Missouri State Parks Foundation website.
Okay.
So if you're able to access that, but yeah, we can make sure that we have a link to that.
Yeah, as you need the name, the address, all that kind of stuff of it. And when I donate through the charitable account that I have. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, and Annette,
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Thanks
I'm
for all you
excited.
do.
Well, thanks. Annette mentioned about the estimated cost to build the full trail versus the funding necessary, and that's a very good point. So to accept the trail, state parks needs 9.8 million to accept the trail. Then it becomes a state park. Then they hire rangers, they start doing the fencing, that kind of stuff. And at that time, also towns and communities along the trail are going to be able to start developing within their city limits, or a county could start developing, and they'd work out an agreement with state parks that it would have to be developed to a certain standard. The total cost that is estimated to build the entire trail is about $80 million. It could be higher than that. It could maybe be lower than that, depending on town participation, that kind of thing. The most expensive part, of course, are going to be those bridges and tunnels. There's a tunnel that's 4 football fields long. It's going to need quite a bit of work. So that's where a lot of the cost is. They have not given us any indication of where they would start building first. There's a lot of the trail that could be developed for not much money because there's a great base that's already there. The photo we showed from Stover is a good example of that. You've got a great gravel base, you'd need to mow it, you'd need to grade it, put down some limestone and stuff, and you'd have a pretty good trail in those sections. So the 80 million was the projected cost that was given for the development of the entire trail. And then how will the east end of the trail be connected to St. Louis? So that is a good question. That is something that there is a rail line from, I believe it is Union on in. That is a possibility of building beside that, that's come up and all of that. But I don't believe that has been decided yet on how it would connect into St. Louis. In the short term, the route would go up through Washington, Missouri and connect to the Katy Trail. So in the short term, it would connect to the St. Charles, St. Louis area going up that way. But as far as the other, that's still to be determined. But I know that that is the goal of, that's the long-term goal, is that would go on into St. Louis. Does anyone else have other information on that? Okay.
I will say there are various maps you could find online from different groups. I think a lot of the ones that you'll see that go past Union are more visionary, so not necessarily anything that's been finalized or studied very specifically, but there are different options, and it can potentially connect to systems within the Great Rivers Greenway network, which gets into western parts of St. Louis County.
Hey, Ron, what's the current condition of the surface of the trail, either the whole thing or in different parts? And can I go ride it right now?
So legally, you can't go ride it right now. It would be considered trespassing. I don't think anyone's going to do anything if you do go out and ride on it. So I have ridden parts of the trail. There are parts that if you're on like a gravel bike or a mountain bike, you would be able to ride through. The main problem has been with trees and things growing up. When they've mowed it, it's pretty easy to ride and that kind of thing. One of the things that's happened is there is barbed wire across the fence at several crossings, and things have grown up. And if you're not careful, you would ride into that barbed wire and flip over the handlebars. That happened to someone I know. I'm not going to say who it was, but someone I know was riding and they flipped over their handlebars over barbed wire. Okay, it was me. That happened to me while I was out exploring on the Rock Island Trail, just to kind of see some things. So a lot of it is in really good shape, and a lot of it would be very hard to ride, but you're not supposed to be on there. I will say this in answering your question, Lawrence, that in a lot of these towns and communities, the corridor is already being used. So it's already a path for people to walk to work because it's safe and that kind of thing. Most of the towns are, Ameren comes through and mows, or the town mows along the trail, and it is being used already as a safe route for a lot of those people.
Did you catch Annette's question from earlier?
The estimated cost, yes. Any other questions, comments? All right, if there is nothing else, we will not keep you any longer. Appreciate everyone joining for the presentation. We're very excited about the Rock Island Trail, what it will do for Missouri, what it will do for the towns and communities. And please reach out if you have any other questions. And thank you for joining today.